1950s and 1960s were a prosperous time in South America. But beneath this lively facade, a storm of geopolitical tension is brewing. What happens when global superpowers interfere in elections or even assist in toppling entire governments? This is a scenario the United States has been involved in across South America since the 1950s. Such actions raise critical questions about sovereignty, stability, and the long-term impacts on nations' political landscapes. Join me as we uncover a hidden chapter of history exploring which South American countries were profoundly impacted by America's proxy wars. In the wake of World War II, the world was divided into two ideological camps: the capitalist West, led by the United States, and the communist East, spearheaded by the Soviet Union. South America, with its rich resources and strategic location, became a focal point for this global tug-of-war. The United States, determined to prevent the spread of communism, engaged in a series of covert actions and diplomatic maneuvers aimed at influencing the political landscape of South American countries. This Central American nation found itself at the heart of a geopolitical storm when Jacobo Arbenz, its democratically elected president, embarked on a program of agrarian reform. Arbenz's policies aimed to redistribute unused lands, including those owned by the United Fruit Company, a powerful American corporation, to the Eisenhower administration and the CIA. Arbenz's actions echoed a dangerous tilt toward communism, an unacceptable shift in America's backyard during the Red Scare. Fueled by a blend of anti-communist sentiment and the protection of American business interests, the CIA launched Operation PB Success. This covert operation was a sophisticated campaign, a psychological warfare, economic pressure, and the mobilization of a CIA-trained army of exiles and mercenaries. The operation culminated in June 1954, when the Guatemalan military, swayed by the CIA's efforts, turned against Arbenz, leading to his resignation and exile. The aftermath of the coup was immediate and far-reaching. It installed Carlos Castillo Armas, a figure amenable to US interests and power. More profoundly, it set a precedent for US involvement in the region. Guatemala became a cautionary tale of the length to which the United States was willing to go to prevent the perceived spread of communism. The operation's success emboldened further interventions in Latin America, marking the beginning of an era where proxy wars and covert actions became the norm rather than the exception. The Cuban Revolution of 1959 wasn't just a local upheaval, it was a seismic shift that echoed across continents. With Fidel Castro's ascent, Cuba transformed into the first communist state in the Western Hemisphere, challenging the geopolitical status quo. The United States, watching closely, saw Castro's victory as a direct threat to its influence in Latin America. Washington's fears weren't just about Cuba. There was a broader concern that communism would spread through the region like a domino effect, toppling governments one by one. In response, the US embarked on a series of actions aimed at curtailing the spread of communism. The most infamous of these was the Bay of Pigs invasion in April 1961. Orchestrated by the CIA, it aimed to overthrow Castro by landing a force of Cuban exiles on the island. However, the invasion was a disaster. The invaders were quickly defeated, and the incident embarrassed the United States on the global stage. Far from weakening Castro, the failed invasion strengthened his position, securing Soviet support and solidifying his rule. The fallout from the Bay of Pigs had far-reaching consequences. It not only intensified Cold War tensions, but also pushed Cuba closer to the Soviet Union. This alliance was symbolized by the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962, bringing the world to the brink of a nuclear war. Despite the setback, the US continued its efforts to counteract communist influence in Latin America. adopting a variety of strategies, from economic sanctions to covert operations. Yet, the Cuban Revolution remained a powerful symbol of resistance against US hegemony, inspiring other leftist movements across South America and beyond. In the early 1970s, Chile became a focal point of the Cold War's ideological battles. Salvador Allende, a physician and Marxist, rose to power in 1970, becoming the first democratically elected socialist president in Latin America. His vision for Chile involved nationalizing key industries, including the copper mines, which were largely in the hands of American companies. Allende's policies, aimed at redistributing wealth and reducing economic inequality, were seen as a direct challenge to US interests in the region. The Nixon administration, fearing the spread of Soviet influence in its backyard, initiated a series of covert operations to destabilize Allende's government, marking the beginning of a turbulent period in Chile's history. As tensions escalated, the Chilean economy began to suffer. Inflation soared, and shortages became commonplace, partly due to US economic sanctions and covert efforts to undermine Allende's policies. The polarized political climate led to widespread protests, strikes, and a deeply divided society. In this atmosphere of unrest and economic instability, the stage was set for a dramatic shift. On September 11, 1973, General Augusto Pinochet led a military coup backed by the support of the US government. The presidential palace was bombed, and President Allende died in the chaos, marking a tragic end to his ambitious socialist experiment. Pinochet's regime, which lasted for nearly 17 years, dramatically altered the course of Chilean history. The general's dictatorship was marked by widespread human rights abuses, including imprisonment, torture, and disappearance of thousands of political opponents. The promise of restoring stability and preventing communism came at a steep price for the Chilean people. In the dense jungles and bustling cities of Nicaragua during the 1980s, a pivotal chapter of America's proxy wars in South America was written. The country became a battleground for influence between the superpowers of the Cold War, with the United States and the Soviet Union backing opposing factions in the struggle that would have far-reaching implications.
They were denied power in the new government. Some were imprisoned, others exiled. Thousands who fought with the Sandinistas have taken up arms against them and are now called the Contras. They are freedom fighters. What the Sandinistas have done to Nicaragua is a tragedy.
As the Sandinista National Liberation Front, or Sandinistas, came to power in 1979, overthrowing the Somoza dictatorship, the socialist reforms in alignment with the Soviet Union and Cuba alarmed the United States. Concerned about the domino effect of leftist governments in the region, the US sought to counteract Soviet influence by supporting the Contras, a diverse coalition of rebel groups united in their opposition to the Sandinista government. The support for the Contras was not just military, but also included financial aid, intelligence, and training. The assistance was covert, funneled through clandestine channels, as the conflict in Nicaragua became a prime example of Cold War geopolitics extending into Latin America. The nature and the extent of the support became a source of intense controversy and scandal. The Iran-Contra affair, a political scandal that erupted in the United States in the mid-1980s, exposed the depth of the US involvement in Nicaragua. It was revealed that the Reagan administration had secretly sold arms to Iran, despite an arms embargo, and used the proceeds to fund the Contras, bypassing a Congress that had prohibited further aids to the rebels. This scandal highlighted the lengths to which US government was willing to go to counteract Soviet influence, raising questions about the legality and morality of its actions. Beyond the geopolitical maneuvering, the conflict in Nicaragua had a profound human cost. Thousands of Nicaraguans lost their lives, and the country was left with deep scars, both physical and psychological. The war disrupted communities, displaced families, and hindered the nation's development for decades. As the Cold War faded, so did these proxy wars. But their legacy remains. They left a trail of human rights abuses, disrupted societies, and a complex view of American interventionism. Today, as we reflect on this period, we are reminded of the delicate balance between national interests and moral responsibility. The history of America's proxy wars in South America is not just a tale of geopolitical strategy, but a cautionary story of the human cost of global politics. So how do you feel about America's proxy wars, and how do you think it has changed or shaped entire nations in Latin America? Let me know in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll be making a video soon about America's proxy wars in the Middle East. So if you enjoyed this video today, make sure to leave me a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.